Hey ladies, welcome back to the show. Over the past few weeks, we've been talking about how to turn intention into action and what mindset shifts need to occur in order to do that. Last week, we talked about the idea of perfectionism and how we can start to think about progress versus getting stuck on our health changes need to be perfect. On today's episode, we are going to talk about this idea of instant gratification and why delaying gratification can really help when it comes to making any health changes that you desire. Welcome to the Whole Health Empowerment Project podcast. This show is for women over 40 who are trying to create balance in their life when it comes to food, body, self-care, and wellness. You struggle to put yourself first, to maintain consistency when something isn't perfect, or maybe you feel like you don't have enough time or willpower to achieve the goals you desire. I'm your host, Trisha Stefankowitz, registered dietitian, nutritionist. I've worked with women like you achieve their goals by focusing on the next best step, no matter how messy, and meeting you where you are right now. In this show, you'll learn practical information, actionable strategies, and mindset tweaks so that you can feel healthier, more comfortable in your body, and make choices that work for your life. Come join me in failing forward, one imperfect step at a time, into the journey of health, wellness, and self-care. Welcome to your new project. We live in a fast-paced world where it's very easy to get stuck in this idea that we want immediate results. We can order food on our phone really fast. We can watch a whole series on Netflix or whatever streaming service we want without having to wait for the next episode. And we can get groceries delivered to our home, and it doesn't usually take that long. This convenience has conditioned us to expect immediate results in all areas of our life, including our health. We start doing something different with our diet, or we start including physical activity into our day, and we expect to see these changes within days or weeks of starting it. You know, we've all done that. Like, you might have walked a couple miles and then you're looking at your body and you're like, oh, I can already see changes. But then maybe you get on the scale and it's not reflected yet and you give up. It's important to understand that sustainable health improvements often require time. And because it requires time and this delayed gratification, patience and consistent effort are required. So this is where this concept of shifting from instant gratification to delayed gratification can be really helpful in the long term so that we can maintain the consistency that we need to in order to get the health changes that we desire. On today's episode, we are going to explore why this mindset shift is essential for long-term success when it comes to our health and how to cultivate and trust the process while also feeling like you're not getting what you want in terms of health changes immediately. When we talk about this idea of instant gratification, it's typically that we want to see the fruits of our labor very quickly. We don't want that delay. But in context of our health, wellness, and self-care, this could look something like you're trying to lose weight quickly, you are expecting immediate changes or your body to look differently when you start exercising. You could not see those changes as quick as you would like to see them. And I think what usually tends to happen is that then because we don't see the results, we give up, and it's very hard to be consistent, which then ends up putting us back on this track again in a couple months when we feel motivated again. But this mindset is prevalent so much in our society where we want a quick fix and immediate rewards for most of the things we're doing. And so even for weight loss, I mean, I think everybody wants a quick fix. Nobody wants to go through the pain of being in this place anymore, because I think when you're there, it feels like so unbearable. And so it's easy to have this idea that you want this quick fix, and that desire for instant results is very normal in terms of human nature. But when it comes to our health, we are trying to make these changes be something that is for the long term, that ends up being a lifestyle change. And so there's a mindset shift that typically needs to happen so that when we don't see these quick results, instead of feeling discouraged, although, my gosh, you can feel discouraged because, again, we've all been there where you feel like you're giving it your all and you're not seeing the change that you desire. But one of the things that happens, though, is that you can give up, and then you're going to be in this position again. And this all or nothing approach can lead you down this path where you're stopping, starting. And then in the long term, you don't ever achieve the goal of health, wellness, or self-care that you desire. And so that's why it's really important to understand, if you're in a place that that is what you're trying to achieve when it comes to your health, wellness, and self-care. Now, the value of delaying that gratification is many. There is this, it can be really hard to, when you're working so hard at something, to delay this instant gratification or this instant reward that you really want for doing all of the hard work. You want to see the fruits of your effort, and you want to see it in your body because you've been working really hard to have what it is you're trying to do. But in terms of health, it means that it's important to understand that meaningful changes take time, and that the benefits of our efforts may not be immediately visible. And so most of you know this, right? In your brain, you know this. You know, okay, I've only been eating this way for a few days. I've only been exercising this way for a few weeks, but maybe it takes longer than that to build the muscle mass and have the body that you desire. And I understand that. I think we've all been there. But again, it's knowing that you're in this for the long term, and there isn't this option that you can quit. Because if you quit, then you're right back at square one, and you're back in this cycle of eating right and then eating not the way you want, and then exercising and then not exercising. And I'm not saying that it's not normal to have periods where you give up. I think we've all been there and we've all done that. But really starting to think about, when it comes to your health, that it's more than just the appearance of what you look like. It's also what it's doing inside of our body. And sometimes that takes time for that to happen. And you're trying to do this forever. And so as you're trying to do it forever, having this take the time that it needs to make this habit something that is longer term is going to be really important. Let's talk about why adopting a mindset of delayed gratification is crucial when it comes to your long-term health. First, sustainable results and habits. Quick fixes often lead to quick results, but also shorter lived results. We've all been there where maybe you went on a diet that you needed to get into whichever piece of clothing and you lost the weight. But then typically you probably then regain the weight pretty quickly, and those results were not sustainable. By focusing on delayed gratification, you can start to prioritize sustainable habits that will benefit you in the long term. In the past, we've talked on here a lot about neural pathways. So these pathways in your brain that can make the habit, the more you do it, it can really start to figure out what works, what doesn't work, and then you're actually making changes in your brain for that habit to be more sustainable. It's hard to do that and to create those pathways when you're doing them for such a short period of time that you're not going to probably be able to get that for the long term. So if you're doing something for a very short period of time, it's hard to connect those pathways. And the result will probably be that, sure, you may be able to do this now, but what about in the future? How will you be able to maintain that for the future and for the long term? Another reason why it's important to adopt a mindset of delayed gratification is that you're building healthy habits. When we're talking about transformation, and in particular health transformation, all of that means that you're developing and maintaining healthy habits over time. You are making consistent choices and you are figuring out what works for you, what doesn't. You're revamping it based on what doesn't work, and then you're trying again. So it's this formula that you're doing something, you're revising it, you're doing something that fits better into your life. So you're constantly changing it to work and to individualize it to you. So in that process, it doesn't happen overnight, those changes. It usually takes some time and some patience until they become a natural part of your lifestyle. And this can be with anything. This can be with any health change that you're doing. It's going to take time, whether it's eating, exercising, sleeping, anything that feels like it's a little bit harder for you to do. So in this episode, I'm talking a lot about diet and exercise because they seem to be the two health changes that people struggle with the most and that women want the most quickly to see the results. And I'm including myself in here. So that's why I'll talk about that. But really, it's most health changes just take time in order for them to stick. There's an emotional resilience here that's also really important in terms of changing your mindset to one of delayed gratification. When you focus on delaying your gratification, you learn to manage your expectations and to build resilience. And one of the important things is that you start to understand that setbacks are a normal part of the process, and you become more equipped to handle those setbacks and those obstacles that will always pop up along the way without completely giving up on your goals. You'll know when you start something and you're doing it quickly is that it can be really easy at the beginning because you feel so motivated, but then you want to give up as soon as it feels harder or it doesn't fit into your life. And so if you're able to push past those feelings, then you're going to be able to also hopefully get to a place where you can know that having barriers and that moving forward isn't always part of the process. And that's in life too. Anything that you're trying to do, you will always have barriers. You will always have times where it feels that you are on this pathway forward and then this pathway backwards. But when it comes to our health, for a lot of us, I think that there is already this history of failing. And so it can feel really hard to be able to go through that again. There's so much more emotional. There's just an emotional past, and there's a lot of emotional feelings that come with this, I think, for women. And so it makes it a little harder to push through, but knowing that this is very normal, but this isn't the part that's on social media. It's usually just the before and after, which drives me insane because it doesn't talk about the middle part, which is all of this. It's the mindset shifts that happened. It's the obstacles that came along the way, but they just continued to do it. It was that they were able to appreciate the journey and they were able to figure out how to change it to work in their favor and to not feel like it had to be perfect all of the time. And so emotional resilience becomes really important because you can start to manage the expectations and you can start to manage the setbacks that come up along the way. And then another part, or the last thing about the value of delayed gratification and how adopting this mindset can help you, is that you start to appreciate the journey. It encourages you to focus on the journey, not just the destination. When we first start making health changes, it's so easy to get to the beginning and then the end. And we can tell ourselves, okay, in a month, I'm going to weigh this. In a month, I'm going to be able to do this many miles. But when you're able to push past that, you can really start to see that the journey usually comes with lots of small wins along the way and also some obstacles. But for every step you take that is getting you towards your goal, it's progress. And it allows you to be able to be in it for the long term if you're able to celebrate those small wins along the way. So appreciating the journey is not going to probably feel so great when you're in it, especially when you're in it at the beginning and you want immediate results. And also, I think there's some points in the journey where you feel like, all right, already. But this is where you're really going to be able to, I think this is really where we pull our strength out of ourselves. And at the end of the journey, or when you get to a place that feels closer to your goal, you're going to look back at this time and be like, wow, I can't believe I did it, and really start to appreciate the journey. So when you're on it, you may not always feel that way, but typically, especially when you're doing health changes, there's usually other things as you make that health change and as you get towards your goal that kind of starts to change in your life too in a positive way. And so no matter how small that goal is, just remembering that your life is changing for the better. It's getting you closer to your goal. It's not always going to feel good. You're not always going to be motivated, but you're being consistent. And I think that as you kind of near your goal more, you're going to really appreciate all that you've done, and you're going to see and acknowledge how powerful you are and how resilient you are, and how much you've changed along the way. And then I think you start to see the things that you couldn't see at the beginning, and all of the wins and the challenges that you needed to go through in order to get to the other side. If you're in a place right now that you want that instant gratification, how do you start to shift your mindset from that to one of, it's going to take a little time, I may need to delay gratification? How do you do that? Well, I think it starts with having intention and practicing and figuring out strategies that work for you, that help you make that shift. One of the first things I would say is to set realistic expectations, understanding that whatever health change that you desire may take some time. So set goals that are realistic and attainable, that allow for that progress to unfold. When it comes to, let's first talk about weight loss again, because I think that's what most people focus on, even though on this podcast, we try not to focus on weight loss. But I think that for most women, that really is the goal. So instead of thinking, oh, I want to lose 30 pounds in 3 months, starting to figure out what it is you can do right now, and then kind of calculating that out to see how long it will take. So for instance, the recommendations are usually 1 to 2 pounds a week. I think when most women are trying to lose weight, they always think, oh, I'm going to be that person that does 2 pounds per week and I'm going to lose 8 pounds a month. And so set the expectation that that may in fact not be you, that maybe you're going to be somebody who only, when I say only, it's in quotes, because if you're trying to lose weight and that gets you to your goal, it doesn't matter how much you lose. It's just that you're moving in the direction that you want. And that's a mindset shift in itself. But starting to think about a half a pound and a half a pound to a pound is still weight loss. So if you were to lose that per week, that would be 2 to 4 pounds in a month. And if you're able to be consistent and not to feel like somehow you failed, you're still losing weight. So over a period of a year, you're losing 2 to 4 pounds a month. My gosh, that's 24 to 48 pounds in a year. And so a lot of times I think with us as women, we don't see, we just see that half a pound or we just see that pound and then we're disappointed and we give up. But what if you were able to stay on that for the long term? Because I think that is way more realistic than what most people experience. I think most people feel like somehow that they failed when they've done that. But if you're able to stay on track over time, you're going to get to what you want to achieve. And you're not 20 years old anymore. So maybe you're not going to lose it as quick. So I understand the idea that it feels like that you're failing, but know that that is still a win because you're still moving forward. But again, that takes a mindset shift of seeing that as progress versus seeing that as failure. But I think it also shows to the expectation. And I wouldn't even weigh yourself. I mean, you can weigh. And knowing that weekly, there's going to be different things going on with your body. So I would kind of see what that looks like per month and don't count it just as a weekly win. Really look at it for what it is. And if you're able to lose 2 to 4 pounds a month, or even less than that, if you're able even to lose anything, then that can be progress. And if there's other things that maybe you want it to be quicker, then looking at what you're doing to see if you can tweak anything to make a difference. And that's what this is about. It's about trying something, not being extreme, having your expectation be realistic for what you can do in your life right now, not what it was when you were 20 or 25 years old, because your life is different. Your body is probably different. How you store your muscle and fat, that proportion may be different. So there's going to be all of these things that are going to account for the expectations that might be different than it was for you 20 and 30 years ago. So setting realistic expectations about what you can do right now for what your body is right now, and knowing that any goal that you try to achieve is a gradual process. This is something that can be really helpful for you to maintain consistency for the long term versus hopping on and off a behavior and never achieving the goal at all. Focusing on the long-term benefits is also a way that you can start to shift that mindset from instant gratification to delaying it. Reminding yourself of the long-term benefits of your health goals. Writing down what your why is. Why are you doing this? Revisiting this why regularly. Just kind of seeing what you accomplish, and don't focus it just on your weight. Figuring out how your body feels. Do you have more energy? Do you feel proud of yourself because you're making a commitment to yourself? Are you walking with your friends? So now you see your friends and you're able to manage your stress better. These are the things that are going to allow you to stay motivated even when you don't see immediate results. And these are going to be the small wins along the way that are going to help you maintain the consistency that you need to have when motivation eludes you or starts to fade, so that you continue to do this over the long term and that you don't give up. Celebrating the small wins is also another thing that you need to do, because recognizing and celebrating these small achievements along the way are really going to help reinforce the positive behaviors that you're doing, and that will help you maintain consistency as well. So recognize that. Did you eat a meal that you were really proud of that you made instead of buying something out at work? Were you able to get a good night's sleep? Were you able to do a workout that you didn't think was possible? Celebrate all those things. Don't just keep it in your head. Tell somebody else, because or write it down, do something, acknowledge it. Most women, I feel like, don't do that. We just say, oh yeah, I did this. And they're like, and I do it too, where you're like secretly proud of yourself, but then you have nobody to tell because maybe you're in this journey by yourself. But then write it down. Do something to celebrate it. Don't just overlook it, or don't not give yourself credit for it because it's a big deal. And I'm telling you, on those days where you're really struggling, you can go back and be like, oh my God, look at me. I lifted this weight and I am so strong, and that's my goal. So celebrating those small wins is really going to help reinforce that positive behavior that you did and acknowledge what you've done to keep you staying consistent for the long term. Patience and practicing patience is another thing that can help with creating that shift, that you start to have this self-compassion for yourself and recognizing that being kind to yourself and having patience with yourself, as change usually is a process and it takes some time to occur. Understanding that there will be obstacles and setbacks along the way, and that is completely normal, and that each day that you have is an opportunity to make better choices, to do things differently than you did the day before. And then lastly, trusting the process. Have faith that consistent efforts will pay off over time. And this is a hard one, especially if you've been doing something for a while and you see results, but they're not exactly what you want them to be. But trusting that what you're doing and that the value of your actions will pay off at some point. And that even if you don't see results immediately, there is and will be a reward for your consistent efforts. This is going to really help you stay motivated to your goals. And I think this one can be especially challenging because it's this idea that you're trusting in what you're doing. But some of it too is that if you feel like you're doing something and you've been doing it for a really long time and you haven't been getting results, then maybe reevaluating what you're doing or looking into doing something differently. But if you've only been doing it like a month or 2 months and you do see some changes, like you are seeing that you feel better, even though you might not be having the outward changes, trust that process. This is where it becomes important that you just keep going, because that is exactly probably when you're going to start to see the results. However, if you give up, you're never going to get there. And you're probably, most of you, on the cusp of just about seeing results if you would just stick with it and trust that you're doing what you need to do in order to achieve your goals. And I believe that happens a lot too, where you're just kind of right on the precipice of seeing the results, but then we give up too quickly because we start to not trust ourselves, and we start to feel like maybe we did something wrong and we don't really see the value in our actions anymore because the effort feels like it's too much of a sacrifice. But if you're able to trust the process and have faith that your consistent effort will pay off, then that's where you're really going to see the reward. And I think that's also where you're really going to start to appreciate the journey when you look back at how far you've come. Some examples of shifting mindset. I'm going to give you some things that maybe you say or that you feel. So the old mindset may be, I need to lose weight fast for this event so I can fit into this dress. The new mindset would look like, I want to develop healthy habits that will help me maintain this healthy weight for the goal of my lifetime. And so maybe that looks like to you that instead of giving yourself a month or 2 months to get into this dress, you start thinking about it a year in advance and formulating a plan of how you're going to do it. Or, you just give yourself a period of time that you can achieve the goal because it's more realistic in what you're doing in terms of your goal setting. An old mindset might be, I didn't see any changes in my energy levels this week when I exercised, that this isn't working. The new mindset may be, it takes time for my body to adjust to new habits. So I'll keep walking and I'm going to commit to it and I'm going to stick with it, because what else is there? I don't want to be in this place again, and I don't want to start this cycle of yo-yoing with my weight and with my workouts. An old mindset may be, I missed 2 workouts this week, I might as well give up. And the new mindset would be, missing a few workouts doesn't erase my progress. I'll get back on track You pick a day. I always have this 2-day rule. So whatever day it is today, it's always a great day to start. Or trying not to go too far in between workouts because then it's really hard to get back on. So knowing that even if you missed 1 or 2 workouts this week, or even if you missed more than that, that it's okay, that it's never too late to get back on track. And what I would say here too is reevaluating why you got off track in the first place and maybe changing that so that it doesn't keep happening over and over again. But either way, getting back on track is really the only option. Some questions to ask yourself about where you are in terms of your mindset when it comes to instant versus delayed gratification is trying to figure out what you've overcome in the past when it comes to any of your health changes. How were you able to achieve the goals in terms of having setbacks too? Can those strategies help you now? So I want you to dig back in to if you're somebody who is trying to lose weight or if you're somebody who is doing anything when it comes to a health change. Most women have been on diets and have failed at diets. That's why I use that as an example. So think back to your times when you're like weighing in somewhere and you worked really hard and you didn't get to the goal weight or the weight that you thought, or that you didn't lose the amount of weight that you'd hoped for. Think about that. How were you able to stay on track and keep going despite that disappointment? For me, I know when I did Weight Watchers in the past, I would go for like a meal that I wouldn't normally eat it, and then be done with it and get back on track. I don't know that that's the best way, but that helped me get to where I needed to go. What does that look like for you? Was it, today I would do something differently. That was my self when I was 30, right? So thinking about what you did in the past and what you can do today if there's any changes and what that looks like in terms of keeping you on track. How did you deal with the difficulty of not achieving what you thought you could or that you should have this week, but then figuring out what will work for you? Is it going for a walk, writing down that you're disappointed? What does that look like for you? The other thing I would say is, what would your life look like in a year if you continue to work towards your health goals? Probably really different, right? You would probably look different. You would feel different. Your mindset would be different, and there would be a transformation there. And so reminding yourself that this isn't just about right now, it's about your health in the bigger term. What does that look like? And if you give up now, where does that leave you? And my guess is that it would leave you having to come back here now. And since you're already in it and you're already doing the difficult part, why not just keep going? Shifting from a mindset of instant gratification to one of delayed gratification is essential for achieving long-term health changes. If you're able to focus on the journey, celebrate the small wins, trust the process, it will allow you to cultivate patience and resilience and overcome any of the obstacles that are likely going to be coming in your future when it comes to trying to be consistent with your health goals. Remembering that good things usually take time, and that if you can just hang in there a little bit longer, those consistent efforts will start to pay off in the long run. So today, for all of you, keep going, stay patient, trust that every step you're taking is bringing you closer to what you're trying to achieve with your health, remembering that it's not about being perfect, it's about making changes, and that any change is progress towards the goal that you're trying to achieve. And I think for most of you, that's having a version of yourself that feels happier, that's healthier, that's more comfortable with who you are than maybe you are right now. I thank you guys for listening, and I will see you guys back here next week. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. If you found value in this podcast, please rate, review, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Don't forget to share this episode with your friends. Together, we can take tiny, imperfect steps towards creating the whole health we desire and deserve. Don't forget to grab your freebie. You can find the link in your show notes or over at triciard.com. I'll see you back here next week.